Hey Morgan, this is Kenzie. How's it going?
Good girl, how are you?
Good. So, are you ready to dive into our topic today, anxiety and intuition?
Yes, ma'am. I'm super stoked about it.
Awesome, me too. So, I thought I would just kind of start off the call and just talk a little bit about myself and my story and kind of like the role anxiety's played for me, as well as intuition. So I actually, about this time last year, I was suffering from like really chronic and like overwhelming panic attacks that happened like every single day. At first, they started out, every week to every couple days, and then it turned into literally every day. And so, like during this time, I think I kind of almost like formed into a little bit of a hypochondriac. Like I constantly felt like I was dying, and I had this fear of impending doom because I was constantly having like heart palpitations, heart racing, like overheating. It really manifested into where I couldn't sleep. Like I started to have like sleep apnea, and I was just like constantly struggling just to like make it through the day. And so I really didn't know how that was going to like affect my life moving forward because I really saw no end to it. I didn't know how that was going to affect my relationship, my work life, like everything just felt like it was literally falling apart. And so now that I'm kind of past that part, I can look back at it and kind of see like what led up to that and how I got past it. So, really, what I feel like led up to that was me mindlessly kind of moving through life, not listening to my intuition, listening to that, gut feeling, that inner voice. And so, what I ended up doing was I graduated high school and then I felt like I had to go to college like everybody else, even though that was not what was calling me. Like college and university and school after school never really had this huge calling to me at that time. Maybe because I just didn't know what I wanted yet. I just didn't feel like I was ready, but at the same time, I felt almost forced. And really, I wasn't forced. I just felt forced based on like society standards and like what everybody else is doing or what your friends are doing. And so I actually didn't have like the best grades in high school. I really just kind of went through that time in my life, and I was never a math person, not good at math at all. And I actually tried to upgrade it 3 times after high school, and I like grade 10 math and I could not pass it. And I'm just like, you know what, that is not my thing, so I'm okay with that, and I'll just move on with my life, right? But so anyways, I felt really limited in like my options to go to school after school because I didn't have that math. So I really narrowed it down to 2 options based on the fact that I didn't have math, which was like a legal assistant diploma or like a travel diploma. And so I chose the legal assisting because I thought, it's an admin job. It's like a very, like basic skills would really probably get me into like any job. So I would always have like, decent hours and like a decent paycheck. So I was like, I guess I'll go for the decent life, right? And so I went that way, and I really did prove myself a lot of things with like that I could actually like be really good at school. I graduated with honors and like, showed myself commitment and stuff like that. But at the same time, I wasn't being fulfilled, right? And so something always told me like, you don't want to be that. You don't want to be a legal assistant. You don't want to be an admin assistant. Like, you don't want to do those things. So why are you doing it? But I did it anyways, right? Because I felt forced in a way, right? I was almost forcing myself and trying to push past that intuition, that inner voice telling me, and just like kind of move with, go with the movements. And so after kind of going through that, then I moved cities, and then I ended up in a really, really, really toxic work environment. So I already knew that's not the place I wanted to be in. It's not the job I wanted, but I went to school for it, so I'll do it anyways. Play it out, right? Play the movie out, see how it ends. And I go to work, and I end up actually in like a really toxic work environment. Like it wasn't just like negative people. It was like my boss who was completely degrading to me. He was like a 50-year-old man, and I was like this brand new, like 19-year-old, fresh faced, like ready to step into my career. And he would like throw papers on the ground, tell me to pick them up. Like every time I go into the office, he would like tell me to shut the door, and he would pretty much like put me on blast for something that I did wrong. Like I couldn't do anything right. I was being overworked. Like I'm a really social person. And so I was like, I'm going to join the social social committee because that'll be like one fun thing about my job, right? It's like getting to meet once a month for an hour with all like, the social committee. And literally after like 2 months of that, so essentially 2 hours of that, my boss told my HR to pull me from the social committee because it was affecting my work. So like literally it was like he was trying to put like walls around me. And if he heard me like talking to my neighbor, he would like come out, he'd be like, you can't get work done through all this talking. And like, it was just ridiculous. Right. And so I felt like I was trying to live up to the standard of my life of like, I just finished school. I just got a job. I just moved cities to move in with my boyfriend and like start a new life. And like, so now I'm like trying to play like this perfect person of like, it's all good. And then especially like even like my boyfriend's family, I was trying to like, make this really good impression of like, because me and my boyfriend have a 9.5 year age gap. Okay. So he is 9.5 years older than me. And so that was another thing where like, his family, some of the people there judged me at the beginning thinking, oh, I'm young, I'm going to use him and like stuff like that. But they just didn't know me then, and that's fine. Everybody forms judgments. And so anyways, it's just I held myself to this standard, and it was all on false ground. And it was all honestly how I look at it now is because I never followed my intuition. I knew I didn't want these things. I knew that's not the direction I wanted my life to go, but I went there anyways. And so why, I don't know, I can't tell you. But now I like all of those events kind of led up to my anxiety, like full on like anxiety breakdown, right? Because I used to over worry a little bit, over stress a little bit, overthink a little bit, because we all kind of do. But it's just like, to what level do you let it affect you? And anyways, it completely snowballed and fell on top of me. Like after my job, I had to quit. Like I had to quit without a job. And then I had 3 months of like no work and like nowhere in sight of like where I was going because I didn't want the same thing. And I knew that. But then what did I end up doing? I ended up going into pretty much the same thing, but for a financial advisor. So the culture of the company aligned with me, and it was a good job. It was definitely like a positive working environment, but it was the same fucking thing. And so I was just like in this like repeat cycle, and like literally everything inside my body was like, nope, you gotta wake up. It's time to wake up. And that's what I feel like anxiety really is like a wake up call. And I feel like it's literally the world's wake up call right now because we're all suffering through it. And it's just like really taking that step back to understand that, you need to listen to yourself. You need to care, and you need to like show yourself self-care. You need to show yourself self-love. You need to begin to build, self-trust within yourself so that, you build that confidence and you can cultivate and move forward on an actual stable foundation, right? Because mine was built on sticks and so many people's are. So yeah, I would love to just throw the floor to you so that you can kind of share a little bit of your story with anxiety, but that kind of sums mine up. So
Wow, yeah, like I totally relate to pretty much everything you said. Like we have pretty similar stories, at least with anxiety and like the work environment and going to school just because you felt like you have to. So I totally relate, and I feel like that's where a lot of people are, especially at our age, when they graduate high school or even graduate college, and then they're like, "What the fuck? I don't want to do this. Like, I don't care to work at a job that I have to sit in an office all day or something that I don't have passion for." But yeah, so I'll explain a little bit of my story with anxiety as well. Growing up in like as early as I can remember, maybe like since I was 6 or 7, I started developing like really like hypersensitivity in social situations where I just got like super anxious, and I wasn't good at making friends. I couldn't keep a conversation going. I would overthink everything. So I think that's kind of where my anxiety started. As I got into high school and then college eventually, which I went to college for a similar reason, just because my parents wanted me to, and I really didn't resonate with it, but kept at it. And that's what kind of started to trigger my anxiety a lot, because I didn't really fit in with the college, what do you call that, like atmosphere, all the drinking and the partying and all that kind of stuff, which I did partake in, but it just made things worse and made me feel like more of a outsider, I guess, at least on the inside. And so I really started straying away from my intuition there just to fit in with my friends and society and like whatever I thought I was supposed to be doing, and just trying to make my parents happy at the same time, because that's how I was raised, is, you know, gotta please them first. And so once I finished college, I decided, like, I was at this point, I was so just like shooken up because I didn't know what path to take. I didn't want to go get a normal job, and I was like always working like just like bartending jobs and like serving jobs. Nothing like that really resonated with me either. And it was always very toxic work environment as well, and just constant like negative complaining about work and like bad customers, just whatever. I mean, you know, the typical stuff. And so I decided that I was going to go travel. So when I started traveling, it was great, but I had a lot of internal issues still going on. And I think that I used traveling as kind of an escape to like just not have to deal with them. And a lot of that stemmed from the anxiety and from the feeling not in place in society, especially now that I was living this alternative path. And so when I was traveling, I actually developed, like, I got sick physically. And it caused me to like change everything about my life. It caused me to quit traveling and come back home and really focus on taking care of myself. And it wasn't until I got back home, because when I got back home and I was sick, I got another bartending job. I got another bartending job, and so I just continued the cycle. Except for this time, it got much, much worse because I was just not taking care of myself at all. I was depressed that I had to come home from traveling. I was anxious about my health.
What made you come home from traveling? Like, you were physically sick, or just like the mental anxiety part?
Yeah, so I was physically, it was kind of both, because I was trying to escape all my anxiety and all my, you know, like bad feelings inside by traveling. And so then I got physically sick. I got a parasitic infection while I was traveling, and it would not go away. Like, I got rid of the parasite, and then my digestive system was just very in shambles pretty much.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so I saw the direct link. Well, now I see the direct link that my anxiety and trying to escape those problems and like having all those ties back to my old life and like just like ignoring it really brought up all of that. And then once I got back to the States and was still sick and trying to work in this like cycle, the same cycle that I was in before, I developed full-blown like you said, like panic attacks, like anxiety, where I couldn't even function. I would lay in bed all day every day because I just couldn't. I was so scared, like anxious about leaving the house because what if I got sick, or like what if I couldn't handle it, or like all these crazy things. And the only thing that has been able to heal me since then, which was a whole year ago, this past year, has been tuning into my intuition and actually following the life that I should be living, regardless of what other people think or not, regardless if it's like normal or not, and you know, really taking and trusting in that alternative route, which is pretty difficult, especially when everybody else is doing something else. And so I think that intuition, at least in that sense, has really, really taken away and like eliminated a lot of the need for anxiety because of being able to trust that. So that's kind of the basis of my story. I don't know if you feel the same way about any of that.
I totally do. And I know what you mean. Like, you know, when you say you just laid in bed all day, because it's just like, literally when I was going through that, it affected my entire life, because I was like scared. Like, it was like fear overcame me, you know, like all of a sudden I was like literally living in fear, where I was scared to go out because what if I have an anxiety attack while I'm out with my friends, and like nobody really understood what that was. And like I would try to open up about anxiety and like talk to some of my close friends about it, but they still didn't really understand. And so I feel like I had to break through like different walls of denial in myself that I had it, as well as the denial of others, believing, oh, there's nothing wrong with you, or it's got to be something physical, right? Because my anxiety manifested into a physical problem. Like, I literally went to the hospital multiple times thinking I was dying of a heart attack, and doctors looking at me, doing all the tests and saying, you're a young, healthy girl. There's nothing wrong with you. You have anxiety. And then, trying to give me pills or something to kind of band-aid it. And then just telling me to like Google it or like research, like maybe look into it a bit. And like, nobody really had an answer in the medical profession that I ran into about anxiety. And so I just felt like lost and trapped because there was no solution. Like there really wasn't a solution available. And I mean, there's counseling and therapy, and that definitely helps to like let you release things, but it sometimes doesn't really actually get to the root of like how you can move forward with like actionable steps. Because like I went through pretty much every heart test you could imagine. My one doctor did take it seriously. He was like, let's just make sure you don't have a brain tumor, because maybe it is something, maybe there's something wrong with you. Like, because I was actually like, I would have these like localized headaches that would come just in like this one spot of my head, where it was like almost like all this stress. Like I hold all my stress in my shoulders, and it would like manifest like up into my head. And it's actually crazy, like what your body creates from your mental mind. Like
It's insane.
Yeah.
I relate with like, going out with friends and shit. Like that was very, very hard. Especially because I was with like around my family at the time. And they'd always be like, oh, you want to go to lunch? You want to go to dinner? You like come hang out with us for the day. Like I couldn't physically get myself to get out of bed and do it. But it's definitely a thing that anxiety produces these physical symptoms as well. Because I don't know if you know much about like the parasympathetic and sympathetic nervous systems.
No.
Okay, so when your anxiety is like activated, and when that like the fight or flight response essentially, like when that's activated through anxiety, that's when you like get panic attacks and stuff like that. But that's why stress creates so many problems. And so that was the only way that I was able to actually heal myself, was like there was nothing that I did physically that helped it more than the fact that I would consciously shift my body like out of that anxiety mode, and like be able, until I got my anxiety under control, like I wasn't able to completely heal like the physical manifestations of it, which is like insane. And it's like, it makes you think like how many things are related to anxiety that we experience, and like people think or either diagnosed with crazy things or like experience these symptoms that nobody can figure out, when really it might just be anxiety.
Yeah.
Which is like really intense.
It is. It's like it's almost unbelievable, because for so long, like I was in denial. I was like, I don't have anxiety. Like, how is this anxiety? Like these feelings that I'm feeling in my body, like how is that anxiety? Like that's impossible. Like I literally thought that for so long, until like I finally found a doctor who was like supportive enough to actually like do all these different tests on me, and like, to really find out that like process of elimination, like there's nothing physically wrong with you. So it's all in your head, right? It's like, wow, that is almost like scarier. Like, and this is gonna sound bad, but that's almost scarier to find out that it's all in your head than like it's an actual like problem that like a doctor can fix. Cause now you're like, oh, I have to deal with this. Like, oh, and nobody knows really how to deal with this, right? And it's like we're also individual and unique, that it's like really, it's like a very fine tailored process for every single different person. And I mean, I feel like, it's funny, because one of the things, like, this was one of my biggest breakthrough moments in having anxiety, is that, like, I was scared to, like, 'cause I used to like to do yoga and go running and do things. And literally, I stopped all of that because I thought I was going to have a heart attack and die, because my heart racing, like, it was just always like racing. It was always elevated. I was always like on high alert, or like really like jumpy and jittery, and just like I was not myself at all. And so like when I was going through, I kind of lost my train of thought, but like when I was going through, yeah, no, I totally lost my train of thought. Where was I going?
It's okay.
Yeah, no, lost it.
Well, I'm curious also to know, like, how do you think, like, because now you're better with anxiety under control. Do you see like any similarities between like either like spirituality, or like how did you get to where you are right now? What steps did you take, or like what changes that you have in your life that really implemented where you're at now?
Yeah, so it's funny because I do now remember where I was kind of going with that, which leads into that. So like the breakthrough moment that I had was, you know, being scared of like doing my workouts, doing anything for that matter that elevated my heart rate. And then, you know, I was trying to start introducing myself back into like some serious yoga and like some seriously like doing something every day, like finding something that I could be consistent in that would help me, right? And so of course you hear like, you know, I researched so many different things, and like meditation, yoga, like those are definitely things that you hear a lot of when you search anxiety. It's just like practicing mindfulness and like, you know, practicing like controlling your thoughts and like rewiring your thoughts. And so with this like breakthrough moment, I actually played like one of like Yoga with Adriene. Do you know her on YouTube?
Yeah.
Yeah. She had this one, and I think it was like yoga for anxiety or something. So I was playing it, and literally like to get through a class online, like I would pretty much be in child's pose the whole time because I like was scared to elevate my heart. Like it was just like I felt like just fear of impending doom all the time, right? And so to break past that was really hard. And so like at one point she got us to like rise up, and when you rise up, like your head sometimes get lightheaded and you kind of are like, whoa. And then literally instead of like, you know, moving into a different yoga pose, she just starts dancing. And I was like, okay, like, cause I wanted to like curl up in a ball on the floor in that moment, and I was about to, and then all of a sudden she's dancing, and all of a sudden my brain was like, from here to here, right? And it was like something I wasn't expecting. It was different. It was exciting. It was fun. And I was like, okay, I can do this. Like I can get through this. And like, just like really getting into your body and out of your head. Right. And that's like what yoga helps with. So then I started realizing, wow, like, wow, that was a breakthrough moment. Like I actually broke past like wanting to curl up in a ball on the floor with fear of impending doom. Right. And so, and it sounds so silly to say out loud, but it's like, it's so real when you're living through it. And so literally that kind of shifted me into this like yoga will help me mindset. And so like I actually put like my belief into something, and it felt right, right? So like I knew my intuition was aligned because it wasn't like I was pushing or like pulling something, like, you know, it might have been a little bit of resistance internally, but it was good resistance, right? It was like, I know this is going to make me better for it, you know, after pushing through this activity. And so I started doing yoga every single day, meditating every single day, and journaling every single day. So like I would set an intention, write in my journal, I would meditate on that intention, and then I would do yoga, trying to like consciously remind myself of that intention. And so it wasn't just like doing the yoga, doing the meditating, doing the journaling, but it was actually like tying all three of those things together, like with an actual intention of like, today I'm going to focus on love, loving myself. And like, today I'm going to focus on like breaking through fear, or like, you know, it's like little things. And so I'm like, not even kidding you, after 30 working days of just committing to myself and doing that every day, I have not had like a panic attack since January this year. And like it's October 1st. So I'm just like, oh my God, who am I? Yeah.
That's amazing. And like it's crazy. I think that a lot of people, when they hear like, oh yeah, you just meditate and do yoga and journal and you're gonna be all set, but it's not the actual practice of just like doing it. It's like the shift that happens, that now your day is actually focused around something positive instead of like, and you have a different outlet and a different like direction for your thoughts versus always thinking about like being anxious about your health or being anxious about what you're doing or anything like that. So it's really crazy. And then it gives you the space to actually be able to tune in to what your body actually needs, and, you know, connect to your intuition a little bit more.
Listen. Yeah. You like, you get out of your head, you go into your body, and then when you're in that meditation, I know it's hard at first, right? Because your thoughts are like crazy, and that's totally normal. But like once you break past that like initial, crazy thoughts, and you start to just like let them pass, and like just become conscious of your thoughts and let them pass, and know that your thoughts don't define you. It's like all of a sudden you find this, like, even if it's just for a second, like a moment of pure silence and clarity. And it's like in that second or millisecond, it's like you can receive like a huge divine download that was just like boom, and like life changing. And like those are the things I started receiving. And that's like that real spiritual aspect started to come in, because then all of a sudden I was realizing, oh my God, my entire life I was living this lie, trying to keep up with it. No wonder I had anxiety. Like, geez. So then now I'm like, my eyes are open and I can look forward with like hope, and and like work towards that. And it's like totally changed my life. Like I literally just quit my job, my 9 to 5 job at the financial advising place. Like it was a really good work environment, but I was like, it's not for me. So I quit, and I went away for 3 weeks to Santa Monica and did my yoga teacher training, because it changed my life. And I felt like I wanted to not only deepen my knowledge and practice, but to be able to like share that with others and use that, in my life moving forward, and like, a career sense. And like now I'm kind of here, and I just, I don't have it all figured out by any means, but it's like I'm figuring it out as I go. And it feels so much better to be living in alignment, not worrying about like what, someone thinks, or like how much money I have in my bank account right now, because it's like those things are irrelevant and they don't matter. And it's like the only thing that matters is your happiness, right? At the end of the day, and your health. As long as you have those two things, it's like you're going to live a pretty good life. So
yeah, definitely. Like, I think that's the switch that is like essential to shifting from the anxiety state of mind and the living in anxiety versus living in alignment, is that you just have to be able to know that the unknown, like, because I feel like when you have anxiety, you think anything that's unknown is like scary, and you're like, it's scary and you don't want to face it. But like when you're living in alignment and something's unknown, it's like not only exciting, but also you just like trust that it's going to be awesome, or if it's not, that you're going to be okay.
Yeah.
Which is like, that's huge, because then you're comfortable in whatever situation. Anything can come to you and you're just centered, and that's where we got to get to.
That is where we got to get to, for sure.
Yeah. So yeah. I don't know if you want to go in a little more about like your intuition, maybe like how you view intuition now?
Yeah. So I guess with intuition, it's something that you kind of have to, I guess, we're kind of talking about, like get into that like state of alignment so that you can really start to tap into that intuition. So I did like a little quick video today actually, and it just kind of talked about like 3 things to really start to get you into that space where you can listen to that alignment. And so the first thing is just really becoming aware of your thoughts, really becoming aware of your emotions, and really becoming aware of your actions. And once you can like get all of those 3 things to live in alignment together, then you will be totally fine. And it's just, because otherwise we're having like an emotion about one thing and then we're acting another way. So like nobody really knows how we're feeling or how we're thinking. And it's like, we don't, it's like we try to like put this huge separation between like our emotions and thoughts and like how we're acting towards people. And that is just like not good. It's like it ends up, snowballing and can eventually blow up in your face later. So I'm really a huge advocate of just like setting that ground, solid foundation for yourself, because once you do, then you start to open up your mind and you become more aware and you become more in tune. And so like that intuition is just like, I'm a strong believer that like we are our own creator, and truly we have all the tools that we need if we look within. And so our intuition kind of like lives inside of us, and it's like also referred to as that like gut feeling, and so our gut is like our second brain. Like it literally controls so much of our body, and it's like still so untapped into of like all the things that like our gut goes through, and it's like being referred to all the time, right? Like it's like we're always saying like, oh my God, the butterflies, like in your tummy, and just like things like that. It's like we're always referring to what's going on in there, right? And it's like, oh, I'm sick to my stomach, or ooh, that made me sick to my stomach, right? And so it's really becoming conscious of like, if you're not listening to that voice in the back of your head, like listen to your gut, right? Like listen to what it's telling you, because it's either a hell no or a hell yes. Like, and it's like, you just have to pick one, right? Like if it's not in that alignment with your, like whatever you're going forth on, it's like, if it's not in alignment with those three things, your thoughts, your emotion, or your action, then it's not in alignment, period, right? And your intuition isn't going to call for it. And so another thing I really feel like is our intuition is like kind of connected to like this aura around us, like our energetic field. And so that's kind of where you get into all the chakras and stuff like that, which is another thing, but probably for another conversation. But like, we have our seventh chakra that kind of resides up above our head and kind of like, controls like that universal connection that we have with everyone in the world. And so it's like, I feel like right now with our world being kind of out of alignment, I feel like we're all suffering from that anxiety. Like we're all feeling that anxious feeling. And it's like now more than ever. And maybe it's because we're actually talking about it and acknowledging it. But that's good, right? Because acknowledging something is the first step to moving forward, right? Bringing that awareness, that acknowledgement to a problem allows you to solve it. So that's kind of where I feel like intuition resides, and it just allows us to be in tune with not only ourselves, right, like that gut feeling, that inner voice, but also to the people around us, to the world around us. And it's just like really becoming in tune with with life as a whole, right, because it's all connected. So
yeah, that you remind me of a good point that I made. Yeah, I made a video yesterday as well on IGTV, and I was talking about like how life that we live is not normal, and that, like you were saying, that more and more people seem to be anxious, and anxiety seems to be like an epidemic that we're facing now. And I think that a lot of it has to do with the fact that as our consciousness on Earth, and as we are becoming more and more aware of like not only being self-aware, but like aware of the things that are going on behind the scenes and stuff like that, people are recognizing subconsciously that they're not living in alignment, and that like a lot of things that they're doing are because of, like, personally, I know that the way I was living before was because I cared a lot about how other people thought of me, or like how I would look in society, or like qualifications or whatever it may be. And I think that people are becoming aware, like not consciously aware, because that's a really high level of self-honesty to be like, oh yeah, I do this because I want this person to think I'm cool. Like, it's more of like their being, their physical form, like is kind of shooken up at the fact that they're not doing stuff because they want to actually do stuff. And then when you said, if it's not like, that's what I live by now, is if it's not a hell yes, then it's a hell no. And so you should always, like, you shouldn't be half-assing things, essentially, I guess. Because when you do that, I remember, like, if I would say yes to something that I actually didn't really want to do, but it wasn't like a hell no, it was just kind of like in the middle, and I ended up doing it, I would always regret it. I would always be like, why did I do that? It was a waste of my time and money and energy. Right? So I think that that's a really big thing that we have to tune into, especially if you're not completely in line with your intuition, or don't really know what it sounds like to listen to your intuition, or can't hear it yet. That if you have a doubt, or if you have not necessarily a doubt, because in some situations we do have to jump, but if it's a situation where it's like, going out with friends and it doesn't seem to resonate fully, if it's not that hell yes, or like, then it's a hell no. And like, you can still have doubts and still have reservations about a hell yes. You just have to be able to recognize that they come from a place of fear versus being authentic concerns. Because we can still, like, something can be for us, but a lot of times we'll talk ourselves out of it. So you got to feel the feeling of that thing before you start letting yourself think about it too much.
Yeah, totally.
Yeah.
No, that's awesome. And so how connected and how in tune do you feel like you are with your own intuition now that you've kind of moved through from like phase of anxiety to like now where you are?
Yeah, I think that I am a lot more connected. Definitely, this is the most I've ever been connected to my intuition in my whole entire life. I don't really remember ever knowing what intuition was because I was so anxious. And so I would think that, yeah, that's my intuition. I shouldn't do that thing, but really I was just anxious. But now right?
Yeah, I'll convince myself.
Yeah, right. But now it's like a lot more aligned, and how you were explaining, like, all those three things that need to be aligned. Once I question that aspect, and I'm like, well, is this something that lines up with who I want to be, or is this something that will get me closer to my goals? It's a lot easier to tap into it. But also trusting myself to know what's right, because something that I've been struggling a lot with lately related to intuition is the fact that, like, there's so much conflicting information available in the world. You can, especially with like diet, which is something that I've been focusing a lot lately, I can go and look up an article for why butter is good, and then I can look up another article, or like 10 on each side, for like why butter is the worst thing on the planet. And so it's really like that aspect of
vegan burgers. Oh my gosh.
yeah.
Yeah.
Right. It's difficult, and it's there's not one size fits all. It's not like that. And even with any medical issue or any issue that you face, it's going to be like that. So you have to be able to, listen to your own body, which is really, really hard, especially if something that you're doing seems to be extreme. So like, I'll give an example. I have been living off of just fruit. Like, I eat just fruit, and everybody has something to say about that. Let me tell you. Right. And so it's like getting to the point where I know what's right for me in this moment, because it makes me feel so good, and it's healing my body as well. And when I do that, and like somebody else comes at me, or like I find something that kind of scares me, like fruit sugar is bad or whatever, it really takes that time to be like, well, how do I feel when I eat it? Or like, how does my body handle it? And it's like that in every aspect of life. It could be a new job or a new opportunity that you come across, and it's like, I don't know if it's for me or not necessarily, but you just got to feel how it feels when you sit with it.
Yeah. And I'm actually glad you brought up that point, because that's where like the whole other can of worms is like people now talking about intuitive eating, right?
Yeah.
It's just like eating in tune with what feels good, right? Like it really comes down to that feeling that resides inside of you of just like, is this serving you or is this not serving you? And it's like, you know what? Not everybody can survive off of fruit, but not everybody can survive off of meat. And it's just like, I also went through a huge diet change, which was like when I did my yoga teacher training, I was on a strict vegan diet. And so, we had a chef who was there with us, and she was very like, helpful. Like we would have like 2 people every like morning, lunch, and dinner who would like help her in the kitchen to like get hands-on learning on like how to cook this food and how to like actually bring it home with you. Because again, so many people have that problem with like eating, intuitive eating, and all that. And so I came home, and I tried to stay vegan, but it was really hard. So I am like, okay, I'll do vegetarian first. But like same thing, everybody has something to say. Everybody has something to say. And it's just like, you know what? It works for me. And I wouldn't have otherwise known unless I tried, right? And so like now I am really consciously trying to get to that vegan diet, because I know it is what's best for my body. And it's like my bowel movements tell me that, my energy levels tell me that, like, your body is constantly talking to you. And that's where being in tune with those things, that's the intuitive part, right? Like it's acknowledging and noticing like what your body is actually saying to you, right? Because it is always talking. And that's the other thing too, where it's like, if you're having this like crazy idea, or you want to go like do something with your life, like travel or quit your job, or just like you have no rhyme or reason except for you just want to do this one thing, it's like that's your intuition, because it doesn't make sense most of the time. Like when you are wanting to make big leaps and big changes in your life, like sometimes it feels so scary and it makes no sense, and we're like, what about my finances, and what about my relationship, and what about my family, like all these things. But it's like, that's other people. Like, what do you want, right? Like, what is your body telling you? Like, what is your mind telling you? Like, what are you being pulled towards? And it's like your mind is logical, and it will always try to find a reason to stop you or to prevent you. And usually that's like surrounding other people, right? Like, oh, I don't want to like ruin my relationship. Oh, I don't know what my parents will think of me. Like, you know, and it's like you're constantly trying to like create a logical reason like why you can't do something, but your intuition is always telling you like what you can do and what you should do. And so it's just like getting that brain chatter, you know, to like kind of just like slack off, and then to also just realize and understand like when that brain chatter is coming in versus like that intuitive voice in the back of your head, right? So there's definitely a difference.
Dude, I feel that like that reminds me so much. A lot of people come to me, especially in the field that I'm in, like the job that I have now. And people are like, well, how did you take that first jump like into entrepreneurship, and like how did you do it? And it's like I did it with my eyes closed. That's what I always say, because like I knew my intuition my intuition was telling me to do it, but my everything else in my mind, my life and everything else was like, hell no, do not do that thing. And so I just had to literally for like just a minute, I just had to forget about all of that and just take the jump and just do it and like trust that my intuition was right. And it paid off, but like at first, you know, it's so scary, but like you gotta just shut that out. And I know it seems like you're shutting out like part of you, but like you're not. It's just your old conditioning, your old beliefs and programs that are not serving you anymore. And so it's definitely time to like recognize that like we can do these things even though our everything else says that we're not supposed to. Like my mom says this all the time. She's like, oh, I wish I could travel like you. And like, you know, I guess it looks like her life has a lot of like strings attached, I guess. But I'm like, you can just do it. Just go do it.
Yeah, sell the house, quit the job, and just do it.
Just do it. But just like extreme advice. But like, you know, if you do want to do something like that, I don't think we need to be as scared as we think we need to be. To do something.
Excitement.
Yeah, for sure. And I wanted to add one more point, which is that your intuition can change too. You know, like something that might right now be good for you and that's going to follow your intuition. Like right now I'm eating all fruit. That doesn't mean in the future that I'm not going to go complete carnivore. I mean, it's highly unlikely, but you know, like keeping that open mind, because if you keep a closed mind with these things, you're not going to be able to hear if your intuition changes or if something changes.
And it's like we're always moving through seasons of life, right? So like you say, totally open to change. It's just being open.
Yeah, definitely.
No, that's awesome. I'm really happy for you that you're where you're at, because it looks like, you know, and sounds like and feels like you're in a really good place. And it's like, you know, it might be easy to talk about now, but it was not easy to talk about, you know, when you're going through it, because I know it wasn't easy for me. And it's just like, it's, you know, sometimes anxiety feels like this journey we have to venture alone. And in one sense we do, because it is an individual experience from, you know, individual past experiences and thoughts and like beliefs, self-limiting beliefs that we've formed. But like, if we just have this like, you know, community and people like you and me being able to like talk to each other, you know, and work things out, it is such a great blessing and such a big help, because when you surround yourself with people who are like where you want to be, or people who are going through similar situations, that helps to elevate you. That helps to bring you more in tune with like that positive vibration and like lifting not only your vibration, but like in turn the entire vibration of the world. Like, because, you know, positivity spreads just like negativity spreads.
Right? Wow. Yeah, I'm definitely really like, it's really inspiring and awesome to see where you're at too. Cause I know like after going through it, like myself, I'm just like so much like respect and props to anybody who's able to do it as well. It's really like a huge feat, but definitely so happy that you've made it through, because now you get to show the way for so many other people, which is really, really awesome.
Yeah, and that's where like the whole journey changes. Right now it's like, now I can help people. Now I can maybe turn this into like a career or a passion project. And it's just, yeah, it's so great. It's so great. And thank you. Thank you for that. And props to you, girl.
Awesome. Cool. Well, I think we're at about 40 minutes.
Yeah, so we can wrap this up. And Yeah, so good talking to you. And thank you so much for sharing more of your story. I really appreciate it. It's like awesome to hear, how you moved through the elements of this whole journey called life and how we can continue moving through it, right? And just, lighting the way for everybody else who needs to move through it or currently is. So
Definitely. Yeah. Thank you as well. This is like, I'm vibing right now. This is good.
awesome. Okay, well, you have an amazing rest of your day and happy October 1st. Yay.
Thanks, girl.
Okay, talk to you later.
Bye.
Bye.